Good afternoon, everybody, or good morning, depending where you're at. Welcome to our summer version of the Maven STD Information System Users Group, our quarterly meetings. We have a great meeting today, some really good presentations, and hopefully we'll have some really good discussions. Before we get started, a couple of housekeeping rules. We're going to do a roll call, and then once we do a roll call of who's on the phone, then we're going to ask everybody to mute your phones locally so that if we want to have discussion or questions, we'll be able to do that. So we're not going to mute everybody's lines from here, but ask everybody to do it locally. But after Marvin does the roll call, then we'll ask you to mute your phones. If for some reason I lose internet connection, hopefully the Ready Talk, the presentation will continue, and Marvin should be able to pick it up. But if for some reason it goes down, give us 5 minutes to get reestablished. You know how technology works. So if you do have any questions, there is that function, chat function on the left. While a speaker is speaking, you can ask them questions, and at the end of each speaker, we will be taking questions, as well as if we need more time, we'll also take questions at the end of the program. So I know we have some longtime members, and we have some new people. So just, as a quick reminder, this Maven STD Users Group is really intended for people that are funded through the CDC STD Apps Grant and other programs that are using Maven software for STD case reporting and management. The purpose of the group is really to do a couple of things, is share best practices, come up with solutions on common problems, help identify sources of technical assistance, maybe work together to share some costs and resources, and collaborate with both the CDC and National Coalition of STD Directors. So one of the things we always like to do is just do a quick pulse of our audience. So if you could, we do have a series of poll questions throughout the session. You could just take a minute and tell us, where do you primarily work, in what setting? Local health department, state health department? Are you a software vendor, et cetera? And we'll take a look at our participants just to make sure we're hitting the right target. So about half of you are from state health departments. Another 16 to 20% are from local or community health departments, community-based organizations. So this is really, kind of what we want to do. Most of our audience is for users of Maven at the state and local level, as well as our vendors to make sure they're aware of what some of the issues are. So Marvin, if you want to go ahead and do a roll call, and then we'll discuss the agenda.
Hello, everyone. My name is Marvin Fleming. I'm part of the Surveillance and Data Management Branch here in the Division of STD Prevention, and I'll go through the roll call quickly. Let's start with, is anyone from Chicago on the line? Connecticut? Hawaii?
Here.
Thank you. I know that Massachusetts is on the line. Minnesota?
Here.
New York?
Somebody's here.
Okay. North Carolina? North Dakota? South Dakota? Texas?
Here.
Virginia? Washington State?
Here.
Washington, D.C.? Okay, anybody else on the line from a project area that we don't have on our list? If you could say,
we're just late.
Okay, thanks, Connecticut. Anyone else?
South Carolina.
Thank you. What about community-based organizations? All right, then, Charlie, I'll send it back to you.
Thanks, Marvin. And maybe a little bit later on, we'll just touch bases to see if anybody else has joined it. My name is Charlie Rabin. I'm a technical assistance consultant with the National Coalition of STD Directors. And we have a partnership with the Centers for Disease Control, Surveillance, and Data Management branch, where we have sort of started and helped in running the Maven users group. Probably, I think we're at least a year old, so hopefully the group has been helpful to people. And we have a really packed agenda for today, so let me get started on that. We're going to have a quick update from me on what's happening with NCSD, update from the Surveillance and Data Management branch at CDC, Marvin, and then our Maven vendor, Consilience, Michelle Brazel, is going to give us an update on what's new and a recap of the recent users group meeting they had. And then usually at every meeting we try to have at least one project area make a presentation, kind of talk about what they're doing that might be innovative or new or of interest to other people. And so we're really excited to have a session from Massachusetts on congenital syphilis NETS extract and syphilis summary reporting. And then if we have time at the end, we usually open it up if people are having challenges or they've done something really new or innovative they want to share with everybody. Hopefully we'll have a little bit of time for that and then wrap it up. So without further ado, a quick update from me. A couple of things. As you know, we have our annual meeting in December. It's in a really great location in Phoenix called the Wigwam. And it's going to be a really good meeting. And one of the things that we're working on is usually the day before the conference, we have a 3-hour surveillance session, and we're currently planning that. We have some really interesting topics we're going to be talking about, hopefully prevalence monitoring, especially using a negative test, talk about electronic case and medical record reporting, using health claims data. And I also want to provide an opportunity, because we are in the planning stages, if anybody has any suggestions for topics that you'd like us to cover, please email them to me within the next week or so, and we'll see if we can incorporate that. A couple of other things that we usually try to do at the annual meeting is we usually have a roundtable discussion of Maven users. It's either at the time of the surveillance session, and if we're not able to get it in there, we also, or we'll repeat it, have a session we have of like minds, where we have roundtable discussions one morning over breakfast for about a half hour, where people who are Maven users can sit down and talk to each other about challenges and lessons learned and that kind of stuff. So I think there's some really, the meeting should be really good and exciting. I do have a couple of quick poll questions related to that. So my first question is, if you know at this time, and I know a lot of you don't quite know your travel status, but if you think you're going to be able to attend the NCSD meeting and the surveillance pre-meeting session, which is usually the day before the conference starts, if you could just tell us yes, no, or if you don't know at this time. Okay, so it looks like about at least a quarter of you are pretty sure you're going to be able to attend, which is great, and about half of you aren't sure right now, and that's totally to be expected, because I know how it is getting travel approval. The other thing that we're thinking of doing this session, we haven't quite worked it out. We're not quite sure we can do it, but I think this is going to help us gauge it, is potentially allow our vendors, such as Consilience on Maven and ASD with Prism, to maybe organize a session the day before the conference, probably the morning of the surveillance session, which is in the afternoon. But if we gave them a couple of hours to do a presentation, have discussions with their users, is that something you might be interested in? If you could kind of give us a yes, maybe, or no, if we had it. And again, we haven't quite worked this out, but one of the things we're trying to do is gauge interest. All right, so at least almost everybody said they either would be interested or maybe. So that's great. And again, it's usually a lot of people do come in a little bit early for the session. And one of the things that's going to be happening at the NCSD annual meeting is, I believe on the Monday before the annual meeting, there are going to be the CDC special interest group meetings, 2 of them. So we will have a lot of people there for those meetings. And then this is going to be the day after that, when there's sort of a little bit of downtime before we do the sessions in the afternoon. So great. So it looks like there is interest on that. Okay, just trying to get to the next slide. All right, so without further ado, let me turn it over to Marvin, who's going to give us a quick update from the Surveillance and Data Management Branch. Marvin?
Thanks, Charlie. Just have a few updates this meeting. Excuse me. The STD Surveillance Coordinators, the next STD Surveillance Coordinators call will be held on Monday, August 29th of this year at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The 2015 STD Surveillance Report is on schedule to be released mid-October of this year. The division wanted me to remind people about the Public Health Informatics Conference being held here in Atlanta, August 21st through the 24th. This will feature an interoperability showcase on electronic case reporting that CDC is doing in partnership with the Public Health Informatics Institution. And of course, on September 20th through the 23rd, there is the 2016 STD Prevention Conference being held here in Atlanta as well. Charlie, can you advance to the next slide? I can't seem to advance it.
Sure.
Thank you, sir. The ELC group has begun scheduling and placing their first quarter engagement calls. This quarter, the ELC group will be reviewing ELR activities, ELR baseline, and STD reporting. They're asking that areas please ensure that the appropriate STD program staff, if possible, are available to attend the quarterly calls. And this is the schedule that they've had so far. This is as of noon yesterday. And as usual, we will be putting the slides on the NPIN site, so you will get a chance to look at the schedule again. That's all the updates I have for this time around. Back to you, Charlie.
All right, great. Thanks, Marvin. All right, so before we have our presentation from Michelle from Concilium, one of the things that's going to help her gauge sort of what she talks about in her presentation is if you could let us know whether you if you attended the recent Maven Users Conference that was held in Boston, I believe, a couple weeks ago. So it looks like probably most of you weren't at that meeting. So about a third were. So hopefully that will help Michelle a little bit as she moves on and talks about some of the recent new developments in Maven. So Michelle, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Charlie. Hi, everyone. I hope everyone's doing well. I am going to talk a little bit about some of the new features that are coming out. So if you were at the conference, you have already heard this. And if you were not at the conference, this is really for your benefit. So can you take me a slide or two forward? Or can
sure.
I
Are you able to move your slides or not?
I can do it.
Okay.
Okay. So just a couple of features. What I did for those of you who were at the conference, I kind of went through the presentation that Gabby and Howard did, and also the one that Colin did, and pulled out the things that I thought were probably the most relevant for STD. So hopefully you won't disagree with this. But the first thing I wanted to talk about is the fact that we have some pretty major party configuration changes coming. The first of which is that the way that it will happen in Maven is going to be different. So actually setting them up in the first place is going to be different because as it stands today in Maven 5.0, we have just the one party configuration screen on the admin side, and you can do everything that you can do in that one screen, which is somewhat limiting. In Maven 6.0, we're going to split out the data configuration from the view configuration. So the data configuration is going to be where you're going to set up the actual fields that you want to be in on your person information, and then the party view is going to be where you can actually organize the fields in the order that you want them to show up in and put them next to each other and that kind of thing. So just quickly to kind of talk about that in a little bit more detail, the data configurations control what party attributes exist, and they enforce the formatting. They determine whether a property is removed by de-identification. They indicate dependencies, and they also, this is where you would also specify the type of party that this particular configuration is applicable to. And one thing that it doesn't say is, oh no, because it's not there, never mind. Then, if you have the view configurations control the order of the party fields. They determine which fields are editable and visible, and or on which screens those fields are editable and visible. And they determine which fields are going to be able to be used for searching, and then the configuration that's available depends on the product. So we still have the product specific localizations that we can do. And then to go on to some of the other features, again, I tried to find the ones that were the most relevant to you guys, and I also only had 10 minutes, so keep that in mind. So we are now going to have the capacity to have user configurable preferences. At this point, they're primarily going to show up on the splash screen, so that means that you'll be able to organize your splash screen in a way that suits your way of doing business. And then let me show you what the splash screen can look like. So you can see you'll have the capacity to have different color header bars on your windows, on your panes, in your splash screen. It's hard to see, at least it's hard to see on my screen, but there are little stars right here next to the workflow names. That allows you to essentially bookmark or favorite your workflows, so you can have the ones that you use most frequently on this screen all the time. And you also have the capacity, I can't show you in here, but you also have the capacity to indicate how many workflows you want to show up on this screen, etc. So while this in and of itself is fairly cool, I think this feature and functionality is probably going to be one of the best things maybe we've ever added to Maven because of the fact that it's going to allow us to do so many more things that are specific to users. And so this is just our first this is just our first foray into the capacity to have user preferences. But there's going to be, like, every time I seem to have a meeting with them, we talk about things that could use user preferences. So I think that this is going to be a really, really cool thing in the future. We also have the navigation breadcrumbs feature, which I feel like might be useful to you guys because sometimes there seems like there's a lot of going back and forth between cases to try to check things out. And yeah, they have, here's a screenshot. So they sort of, I don't know how well you can see this, but there's a little clock-like icon that will show up next to the help and the home button. And this is going to control this is going to show you the most recent 20, I think, pages that you've been on in this session. So this is only per session. But what's nice about it is that you'll be able to go from, let's say, the demographic question package on person A to the field record question package on person B that you were just in, back and forth between two different cases within the question packages themselves, because all of that stuff shows up in here. So I think it'll make navigating Maven just a little bit easier. At least I hope it will. You'll be able to retain the secondary cases history during deduplication. Let me show you the screenshot. So this is the event history tab that you guys may or may not be familiar with. It depends on whether or not you have the permissions to see this tab. But what's nice about it is that if you do merge 2 cases or 3 cases or 10 cases or whatever, you can go back and see the respective history on each of the cases that was merged, and or you can see any combination thereof. So I think that'll be handy and a nice feature to have also. We will now be able to display additional information on the person deduplication screen. So party attributes are going to be collapsible, and we're going to have associated party cases. So existing associated party data, so existing cases, linked parties, that kind of information, all is going to be available on the deduplication page, so as to help with the deduplication process, hopefully, as best we can. So here it's showing you that, I think this says John Henry, but I actually can't read it, has these 3 cases as this person and these 2 cases as this person, and it's your deduplication screen. There's also some party attributes right here, which are, I think, expanded. Next, we're going to allow the investigation field references in dynamic list questions. So one of the things that we are asked frequently is to be able to reference lab information from question packages, and this is going to allow us to do this. It's not quite to the state where I feel like it needs to be, I'm just being honest, but there are plans to make it get to that state in the next iteration of Maven, like the 601. So I think this will be really helpful and really handy coming up really soon. And then when you have a workflow, now you're going to be able to have the workflow actually open into wizards in addition to, or virtual question packages, in addition to the actual question packages themselves. So I think that's going to give a little bit more flexibility and be a little bit more helpful, because I think a lot of the time you guys would actually prefer it to go into a virtual question package instead of to the question packages themselves. And finally, I was going to show just a quick iteration, show the Maven Roadmap so you guys have an idea of some of the things that are upcoming. So we're working on the mobile access. So for almost all of the most common end user pages, we're going to have mobile access to that. So not just the fact that you could actually look at this on an iPad and utilize it, but actually have it be optimized for mobile devices. We're looking at possibly adding R integration for statistical analysis, so that instead of having to take the denormalized data out of Maven and put it into SAS, for example, we're wanting to do this so that you can have all of your data analysis potentially inside of Maven, which would be nice. We're putting together a standalone provider portal, which I think will actually come in handy for a lot of cases as well. And then in 7X timeframe, they're going to redesign the model manager. I'm pretty sure I'm not going to still be alive by this point, because I've been waiting for this for my whole life. Well, for the last 10 years anyway. But that will be really nifty when that happens. And then they're going to have a more powerful advanced search. So we're going to use Elasticsearch, which is going to be nice because what we're using right now is a little bit old in technology. And then lastly, and also super important to me, we're going to overhaul the entire expression language and be able to actually provide a grammar for said expression language, which will allow for like type ahead kind of stuff, and it will actually help you to find out if your expressions are valid and whatnot. So, does anybody have any questions about any of that stuff?
And we have about 5 or 10 minutes for questions. So any questions you have for Michelle, either on anything she just presented or other questions about Maven, now would be a great time to ask them. And you can either take your phone off mute and ask the question or use the chat feature.
Hey, Michelle, it's Nancy.
Hey, Nan.
Hey, sorry, Zach was at the user group meeting, and we aren't on the webinar because we're in a room that couldn't get set up, so we're kind of taking notes. What is the aimed release date for 6.0 is my first question. My second question is it going to be a set of major configuration changes in core like 5.4 has been compared to 4.0 and 4.1?
Excellent questions. The first one, surprisingly, we didn't get that question at the Maven User Group Conference, which was, like I said, surprising. we don't have a definitive date for when 6.0 is going to be released. We have some other deadlines that are looming ahead of us right now that we're having to focus on, so we're having to take some of our focus off of 6.0 and work on these other deadlines. But for sure by the end of the year is the response I got yesterday. And as far as the configuration stuff, I want to say I don't think so, because the things that I'm thinking of that we are adding, I don't think so. But I don't think you should quote me on that, because I really am not 100% sure of what the whole migration is going to entail. Sorry,
Okay,
Nancy.
so when we get closer, there should be, maybe at one of the monthly Maven user group meetings, we can
Yeah,
ask
for
some
sure
of
we
these
can talk about
questions.
something like that then.
Yeah, because when I hear you're splitting out date configuration and party configuration, I hear configuration and I go, that sounds pretty major, and how that's going to impact moving from a 5 system, which we're getting into production today, Michelle.
Yay!
And STD isn't even in it yet. So,
Okay, well there's that. But
so, anyway,
I don't think that part's going to actually be that bad, really honestly, because we're not changing the functionality. We're just making it a lot more flexible. So I think that one won't be a problem.
Okay, thanks.
Does anybody else have questions?
So we'll leave it open for like 1 more minute for questions. Again, either take your phone off mute or use the chat function. Okay, great. And if you do think of any questions as we move along, again, use the chat function at the end of the next presentation. After we take questions for that, we'll take general questions. So if something pops up, feel free. And I think I neglected to remind everybody, we will be making copies of the slides as well as a recording of this session available up on the NPIN site, usually about a week within the week following of the session. So anybody who could not access it, video-wise, you should be able to get it. So before I turn it over to our next speaker, who I believe now is technically hooked up, a quick question, poll question, is can your Maven system report on syphilis risk factors? Which is related to our next topic. So it looks like about almost 40% of you say it can. A few of you aren't quite sure. So I think that's a really good segue to our next speaker, who is going to be talking about a couple of different things. This is our project area presentation from Massachusetts, from Mary Kate Martland. And again, one of the things we were going to, hopefully in the future, we really want to feature on each of our calls 1 or 2 presentations from our users, because this is stuff I think really people can learn from each other peer-to-peer. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Mary Kate. So Mary Kate, you ready?
Yep, I'm all signed in now.
Great.
Great. Well, hi everyone. So I'm first going to start talking about our NETS extract here. So every Sunday night we have a script that is automatically run. It's on a timed basis, and it pulls all the Maven events within a specified time frame. So right now for the NETS extract, we're sending from the first MMWR report of January 2016 through the current date, and all of those events that have been since updated since the last extract. And a text file is created based on a certain algorithm and calculations, which was originally created by Consilience. That text file is then uploaded by me through SAMS every Tuesday down to the CDC. So about 90% of our labs come in via ELR. As soon as that event is created, and we created an event attribute in the administrative question package that, so for anyone that's under the age of 2, the event attribute is filled in as congenital, and then that flows into a workflow for field staff to assign out the case. So in addition to when the event attribute is filled in, the disease stage, when that is equal to 790, a child question appears that includes all of the congenital outcomes. that we have is not a case, confirmed case, syphilitic stillbirth, and presumptive case. So currently in the NETS extract, we are sending down all congenital cases regardless of the congenital outcome or the disease status. And so as we've gone through over the past year, and I just took over for Kathleen Roosevelt in the surveillance unit about a year ago. So as I came onto the project, we learned that we were sending those suspect congenital syphilis cases as a with a class of 4 in column 199. And as you can see in the highlighted red box, that is listed as a probable case. And so unlike all the other STIs, congenital syphilis should not be sent regardless of disease status. In this case, suspect, probable, or confirmed. And so some of the problems that we've encountered and are looking to fix is that we, when we were originally sending it down, we were not specifying that it was a year-to-date file. We now do that, and we also write in a note saying that there should be treated as a year-to-date file and to delete all previous files, and that helps clear out any revoked or deduped or deleted cases that we had from the previous extract. And so the other thing that we are working on currently, and it's hopefully go into production sometime this fall, is updating the algorithm so that we only send cases that have a congenital outcome, or so that we're eliminating sending every single congenital syphilis case that is listed as suspect. And it's also a policy change on our end too, to make it a little bit for staff to fill in this field earlier rather than later and waiting for or just making sure that we know what's the outcome prior to sending it. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is our syphilis risk factor tracking report that we created. And this was used by the program for a very long time. And so for this report, it pulls in event date, gender, disease stage, and county. And we're able to, so this is the top half of the report, and we're able to kind of go through all the different risk factors for this time period that I pulled. So I did it from January 2016 through June of 2016, as well as that same time period last year, as well as year to date. So then the next slide just shows how the report parameters look like. And so this is the bottom half of the report. I had to truncate a little bit, so there's a whole county section before partner risk, but we have other risks identified, condom use, and then the last bit of the report is looking at any of the additional risks. So we review this report on a biweekly basis with other epidemiologists as well as field supervisors, and it gives a really nice high-level view of all the different risk factors that are happening within the state. And it allows us to triage and figure out whether any geographical location or risk may be outside of our routine concerns. So that's all I had.
Great. Thanks, Mary Kate.
Sure.
Let me open it up for questions. So you can either take your phone off mute or put into the chat feature. So while we're waiting for questions, Mary Kate, if somebody wanted a copy of that report, are you able to export the code to generate the report to somebody else?
I believe so. I can also talk to I'm not sure if I personally can do it. I'm not sure if there's any back-end logic that I can't see, but I will talk to our IT groups and talk to them about getting it extracted out.
Okay, so here's Mary Kate's contact information if you want to talk to her about doing that. So any other questions about the syphilis extract or the risk factor report for Mary Kate? Okay, hearing none. This is a time of our call where we open it up for general discussion, such as if somebody's having a problem doing something and that they want to know if anybody else has a solution for it, or if anybody's created like a new procedure or a report that they think other people might be interested. This would be a great time to hear from everybody, because remember, these calls are for you guys to give you a chance to get together peer-to-peer and share. So let's just open it up and see if we have any questions or people want to talk about something they've done recently that might be interesting to other people. So hopefully somebody will take the plunge and be brave and put themselves out there. And we'll give it about a minute. As a reminder, if you don't have any questions or comments right now, we also have the Maven private users group on NPIN that you can post questions to, ask for resources, see what other people have had. So NPIN remains another source where people can communicate to each other. So we'll give it about another minute and then we'll move on.
Hey, Tammy. Sosky.
Hey.
Okay. Did you want to ask the question that you had posted this morning?
Oh, okay. I can. So this is Tammy, and I posted to the Maven users group this morning on NPIN a question about how you're handling change requests. So is there a form that you've developed? Is there a policy or a procedure? How are you kind of handling any change requests that might come in? Now, we're not quite there at implementation yet, but we do recognize that we will have requests come in. Have you formed kind of a committee that looks at those? Do you look at those monthly? Are there some that have to be prioritized and you have to act on them much more quickly than others, etc.? So if anyone has anything related to change requests, the notes out there on the NPIN site and the Maven users group under change requests. Thanks, Michelle.
Or people can comment now.
Correct.
Other questions? Comments?
So I'm going to comment on Tammy's, even though she's not technically asking that question to me. But I do know that some of our customers have, all of our customers have some sort of process in place to kind of decide which changes they feel they need and what the priorities are on those, etc. And then a lot of the time they'll contact us and we'll talk through the possibilities of how to handle the concern, because the way that they have in their head may not be the best way. So there may be other options that are possibly less expensive or possibly better performance-wise, or etc. So then what will happen is we'll take it at that point and we'll write up what we think we understand you guys are asking for. We'll price it out for you and then send it off to you to have you guys approve it or not approve it, and we'll take it from there in terms of, do we need to make changes? Do we need to scale the scope back a little bit to get the price down? That kind of stuff. I was looking to see who's on the list of people on this call to see if there's anybody specifically that I have done this with, but there's not any names that I'm seeing where we've had kind of this type of exchange just yet. Garrett Lum and I have had a few off and on, but we haven't all the way gone through the whole process just yet. Tammy, I don't know if that helps you at all, but
it does help a lot. I think we're also thinking of some of the things that, they need. Someone is doing a special project and needs an additional question package added, or an additional option within a question package added or removed or whatever, and that would be things that we might be able to handle on our end without involving Consilience, and how are we going to make those work so that, we don't have sites learning or doing their own, etc.
Right. In Minnesota, for example, Dawn, I'm not picking on you guys, I promise. They have sort of a separate, department called Minute that does a lot of the internal changes for them. And so they have a JIRA system that they use internally where they submit their requests, and then those are reviewed and prioritized and that kind of stuff, and then their minute team actually goes and makes the changes that they have the capacity to make on their own, based on priority and that kind of stuff. But they are using Jira in the same way that we use Jira. Excuse me.
Are you still there?
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions, comments, things we should know, the group? Okay. I might have lost internet connection, at least to be able to advance the slides. We're almost done. A couple things is I did have a question about if this call has been useful. I'm not sure people are going to be able to access it right now. But in addition to that, about a month ago, we sent out surveys to both the PRISM and Maven users group, a quick 5-question survey monkey, to find out what part of the meeting works best, what do you need from us, and also give people a chance. Okay, so now I have got connection again. So we haven't had a lot of response to the surveys. I think 8 people out of the Maven group have responded, and you are doing better than the PRISM group. So if in the next week or so, take a look at my last email. I believe it was from either last Friday or Monday as a reminder of the meeting. If you could just really quickly fill those out, and really helps us to both, figure out where do we need to do to improve the meetings, as well as to quantify for the policymakers above us that, the people that are on these calls think they're successful or not. And if not, then we can take the next thing. So if you could just take a quick second and tell us whether you thought if today's call was useful to you, worth your time, and we'll take a quick look at that. So I'm not quite sure the number. Yeah, so far it looks great. I mean, most people, we hope that, again, we're doing these calls because we want them to be worthwhile to you. I know everybody's busy, they got a lot of time constraints, but we're hoping that you can learn from your colleagues and peers, as well as from our vendors on what they're doing and where they're going in the future. So please remember to fill out that user survey. A couple of other things. We also recently sent out a participant list. A number of you got back to me with some changes if staff have left your program or you have new staff. We send those out periodically, and again, they're really a tool for you to be able to identify if a project area is doing something that you're interested in. There's an email or phone number, and also gives you an idea of like how long they've been using Maven and that kind of stuff. So make sure you fill out that. If you have any topics or want to volunteer to make a presentation at one of our future meetings, we'd love to hear from you, because again, we want these calls to be targeted to you. As a reminder, the NPIN site, I think Tammy's example this morning is a good example of when you have questions. We're hoping we only do these meetings quarterly, but the NPIN site really provides a real-time site. I know some people have had some problems with, passwords. I know I'm constantly having issues, but I do think that the site's pretty useful. So we will be posting a recording of this recording, as well as copies of the slides on NPIN in about a week. So I really appreciate everybody's time, and I'll just open it up for questions or comments one more time before we close out. There's nothing wrong with getting done early, but people want to bring up a question or comment, so I'll leave it open for one more minute.
Hey, Charlie, it's Marvin. I just wanted to say, if anyone had any questions about the ELC quarterly calls, you can send me an email directly. I probably won't have the answer myself, but I can get in contact with the right people to get your answer for you. Thanks.
Okay, so hearing no questions or comments, we really appreciate everybody taking the time today. We hope the call has been useful. Do the survey, and we'll see you next quarter, as well as at the upcoming STD Prevention Conference in Atlanta. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, y'all.
Thanks, y'all. Thanks.